Hello and welcome back to the News Desk with me, Chris Stafford, alongside Nancy Gillen. This is Season 4, Episode 16, and we're recording on May the 4th after a bit of a break, Nancy. You running around the world and me going off doing an adventure, and so we've had a bit of a break for a while. But how are things over there?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, kind of like old times, really, just going on quite a few trips, but different, a bit different this time because the majority of them were holidays as opposed to work trips. And yeah, definitely had to I definitely, when I came back, I went to Malaga last weekend to see my friend who lives there and came back and I was very run down. So my body has obviously got a bit of acclimatizing to get used to how I used to live before after 2 years sitting at home. But yeah, no, I'm very well here. Thank you. And yeah, you've had a very exciting break as well.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. Did the Potomac Heritage Trail, cycled that 427 miles with my good friend Marcy Cornegay, and we did it in 8 days from the Chesapeake Bay up through Washington, D.C. We joined the C&O Canal and then the Great Allegheny Pass to cross over the Allegheny Mountains, which was 2,600 plus feet climb. So that was, I think when we came out of Cumberland, Maryland, we had a 23 miles of climb. So that was an interesting adventure one way or the other. Lots of stories to tell. And we finished in Pittsburgh on a grey day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh is pretty grey at the best of days, but yeah, we had all kinds of weathers and all kinds of adventures, and we spoke about it on the podcast. We put it on the Bolder Woman, since I qualify, Nancy being over 50, right? So Marcy hosted that, and we just told the story of the adventure, so you can listen to that on With Sports or on the Bolder Woman podcast, either of those. And yeah, we share almost everything.
Yeah, I've listened to it and it's a really, really interesting listen. Quite inspiring as well. Definitely inspired me to, well, I know I did the marathon last year, but you continue doing those kind of big adventures like that because they are so fun. It's so nice preparing for them as well.
It is, yeah, totally. Now I'm gearing up for my next big ride. So stay tuned for more of that. Yeah, get out there and bicycle and do what makes you feel bold and adventurous. So yeah, have the time of your life is the message. But we're going to switch very quickly to all the news of the day because we've got a few stories to catch up with. Some things have been happening whilst we've been away. Nancy, I know you've been keeping an eye on it, but of course I had 8 days offline virtually. So let's start with the modern pentathlon story here, because we've covered it in the past, Nancy, haven't we? And the changes since the Tokyo Olympics and the equine abuse case that came out of that, which has made the governing body, the UIPM, rethink whether riding should stay in the games. And not all the athlete consultation has been happening that we would expect it to. We would hope for it to be. So we've talked a lot about this. Now they're coming up with an idea to include a replacement for riding. And I'm not sure about this. I know you've read about it too, but this is an obstacle course that they're thinking about, which is a bit like mudder racing.
Yeah, I mean, when I was reading this, I was just, I was like, what on earth is this obstacle thing? And then, you sent me the mudder racing aspect. I don't know. It's. I thought if they were going to replace it with a sport, it'd be quite a traditional kind of established sport. I'm not sure if I'd say what the kind of mudder racing thing is. Like, I don't know. Have they gone for kind of entertainment factor? Maybe, they're thinking, the Olympics. They're going for these more kind of sports like skateboarding, climbing, breakdancing will be at like Paris 2024. Like, have they kind of gone for that angle where they're thinking, wanting to make this more relevant to younger people and maybe think that young people would rather watch this obstacle racing? I don't know, but it's really, really bizarre in my opinion. It's a very strange choice, if that is. I mean, they are only testing it, they're trialing it, so it's not kind of confirmed yet. But yeah, I can understand why there's quite a lot of critics among the athlete group, especially really there.
Yes, the Pentathlon United, which is a group which formed of the athletes to negotiate with the UIPM, with the governing body of modern pentathlon. And they said that they'd long suspected that obstacle course racing was at the forefront of the UIPM's executive board's agenda in replacing riding. But they hadn't even looked at any of the other 60 options that they'd considered. Just highlights the situation further, that they're only looking at OCR or obstacle course racing. So it seems a little bit one-sided traffic here.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's kind of obviously been the frustration with kind of the decision-making process here, even right at the beginning when they were deliberating. Well, I remember they didn't deliberate it really. They kind of just announced, didn't they, that they were getting rid of riding, and that caused a lot of anger among the athletes because it was, I think, the people were arguing that it wasn't a very democratic process. They literally just announced it. There was no kind of consultation with athletes or anything like that. So just kind of the whole way the situation has been handled is by the UIPM doesn't seem to be kind of that fair or kind of professional, I suppose.
No, it certainly doesn't. And we have to remind everybody, of course, this is part of the Olympic Games. So we're coming to Paris in 2024 very quickly. And then after that is Los Angeles. Now, it's not on the cards for Los Angeles at the moment. And the IOC have said they've got to make it clear, which discipline is going to be included. So Paris is first. Nancy, what's your prediction for this getting sorted out to everybody's satisfaction?
Oh, definitely not to everyone's satisfaction. I think it's going to be probably, it just seems like the UIPM are just going to do it regardless, really. And the athletes will be unhappy. And then I suppose it's whether it is up to the athletes, whether they're going to continue, I suppose, to compete. It's quite hard because obviously the UIPM have got the leverage of the Olympic Games. You could see something happening where maybe there's kind of a faction or a splinter group who would just want to keep pentathlon how it is, but then they wouldn't be able to compete at the Olympics. So I think I can see them passing this, but it will just cause a lot of anger among the athlete group.
And you've seen some protests too from your athletes, haven't you?
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks ago at one of the World Cup events. And one of the male athletes, I can't remember his name, but he had medalled and he held up a T-shirt that said something like, "Well, it was against having riding taken out of the sport." So yeah, he held up a T-shirt during when he got his medal. So yeah, obviously making his feelings really clear there.
All right. Well, we'll keep you posted, see if we can get an update on this from an athlete, because it's not going to be resolved very easily, I don't think. And as you say, not to everybody's satisfaction, because the governing body just seem so domineering in this conversation. Let's put it that way. I want to go to the Rugby Sevens now, Nancy, because the HSBC World Rugby Sevens Series took place in Langford on Victoria Island in Canada this past weekend. And the Australian Olympic champions, they won again. They seem to be absolutely unbeatable. They've won a couple of times in Dubai and they won there in Langford. And they beat New Zealand. And I don't know if you remember, but New Zealand's rugby teams, both the 15s and the 7s, have been off the scene now for, I didn't realise it was as long as this, but 800 days due to the ongoing COVID pandemic. And of course, that caused them to suffer at the Olympics, but also in the 15s as well. So kudos to them, because they came back and they got into the final there at Langford.
Yeah, it is really impressive. And we've seen it with the 15s New Zealand team losing to England when they came over here for 2 matches. And I think, well, obviously with the 7s, it shows, despite the fact they haven't been competing, they've got that raw natural talent that they can still get to the final. But it's really interesting to see that rivalry, I think, between Australia and New Zealand, because like you said, Australia are the informed team at the moment. So yeah, quite an interesting rivalry there. Yeah,
it certainly is. And a shout out to Ilona Meyer, who plays for the US, of course. She's host of the Leo's Den podcast alongside Naya Tapper. And she actually pulled off an amazing save against Ireland. She pulled down her opponent just short of the line. It was really, really, really impressive. go and take a look for that on social media. It's all over social media, Nancy, because she pulled her down, rolled her over, and saved a try. Very, very impressive. Well done, Lo. Okay, we're going to move to an update here on the Brittney Griner case. You know, the WNBA player who's been detained in Russia now for several days, weeks, I should say, months now. And we do have an update on that, don't we? Because the status of that has changed.
Yeah, so the US State Department, they've ruled that her detention in Russia she's being wrongfully detained by the Russian government. So previously, I think they kind of accepted her charges and that she was detained in Russia, but now they're going to be more aggressive in their efforts to get her released from there. So yeah, for people that don't know the story, just really briefly, she was arrested in February on drug charges after she had a vape cartridge with cannabis in it. And yeah, it hasn't looked good for the past few months. They've kind of extended her detention until May the 19th, and she could be given a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. So it's actually a very serious situation. And I think there had been some criticism about the way, I suppose, the US government and kind of figures around the WNBA had been reacting to the news. And, you know, there was a debate about whether they wanted it to be really publicized or not, because she could essentially become like a political pawn between the US and Russia. But I think with the US now saying that she's been wrongfully detained is kind of, a change in approach towards the situation. And they're obviously now going to try, you know, put all their effort into releasing her, which I imagine it's a relief to a lot of people because, it's obviously a very serious situation she's in. And one of the best female basketball players in the world as well. It's not that you know, kind of makes her what more, you know, there should be more effort put into that, but it's, you know, she's such a highly significant person in women's sport that it would, you know, it's very important, I think, that she is released as soon as she can be.
Well, as you mentioned, the status has changed now, and the official classification of her being officially detained, rather than the government, the US government, looking at this as from a legal standpoint, it means that the case will be handled by Roger Carstens, who's the Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs, in coordination with the State Department's Office of Consular Affairs. And with the new classification, the US will now be more aggressive in its efforts to secure her release. So it takes on a completely different angle, a completely different approach by the US government, and hopefully, as we saw recently with another detainee who was released, that you know, this might work in her favour, that there will be some negotiation to trade detainees, and hopefully she'll be home soon. So we'll keep you apprised of that as we learn more here on the show. All right, we're going to switch to another story about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, or the consequences of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and that involves football and the UEFA's ban from women's banning Russia from Women's Euros and the World Cup. Nancy, I'm sure you've been watching this closely.
Yeah, so, I think this is, especially the Euros, it's only 2 months away now. There's been a massive question mark over Russia's participation, especially because they've been banned from a lot of other sporting competitions and tournaments. UEFA essentially, I think most people had presumed that Russia would be banned from the Euros, and UEFA confirmed it earlier this week. So Portugal are going to replace Russia for the tournament because they were the team that lost to Russia in the qualifying playoffs. So it's a relatively simple solution for UEFA there. So they are going to go into Group C against the Netherlands, Sweden and Switzerland. And Russia have also been banned from qualifying for next year's World Cup as well, which is in Australia and New Zealand. So, essentially kind of they're disappearing from the face of women's football. UEFA also they made some decisions with regarding Russia and men's football as well. But I kind of think the headline news there is that Russia no longer going to be competing at Euro 2022.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do remember, you remember everything when it comes to stories and stats. And we mentioned this boxing tournament that was going to take place in Madison Square Garden, which would be historic in itself, of course, having a women's boxing tournament there. And it seemed to be quite the fight between the Irish boxer Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, a split decision there. Were you able to follow any of that, Nancy?
Unfortunately, it was on at 3:30 in the morning because of the time difference. But I started my shift at 6 a.m. on the next day, so I could catch a lot of the news and the reaction that was happening after it. So yeah, I didn't follow it live, but I was on it pretty much straight after it finished. And yeah, I think it was very exciting. So it was, like you said, the first time a women's boxing match has headlined Madison Square Garden. There was a sold out crowd of 19,187 spectators, which I think there was one point the crowd was so loud that the ref couldn't hear the bell for the end of one of the rounds. And yeah, I think the match itself as well kind of billed as the biggest women's boxing match in history. I think it definitely lived up to expectation. It was really, really close. Split decision victory for Katie Taylor, but I think a lot of people thought it could have gone either way. But yeah, it just showed how kind of competitive and stuff it was. And yeah, I just think kind of the hype around the event and the attention around it. I mean, you don't have to look that far back to see kind of that women's boxing wasn't given sufficient attention. And there were so many comments from really prolific people in boxing saying, you know, it wasn't worth the time. You know, women couldn't fight and stuff like that. And to kind of fast forward probably only like 10, 15 years and have this massive fight at Madison Square Garden, it's incredible. And yeah, I think for me, Katie Taylor is definitely kind of one of the, you know, greatest sportswomen about. She's just undefeated and always been at kind of the forefront of these big events, whether that's like fighting at the Olympics or doing these kind of big fights. So yeah, really, really historic night for women's boxing.
It certainly was. But I look at the pictures from that, Nancy, and I just go, ouch.
Yeah, looks very painful. They were both really, really, they weren't holding back at all. They were really going for it.
Yeah, it certainly looked that way. But yeah, kudos to them for getting such terrific crowds there to Madison Square Gardens. And I see that if there was a rematch, they feel that they could sell out if it was in Dublin, they could sell out at Croker Park. So yeah, well, we'll follow that story and keep you posted here. All right, we're going to move back to rugby, actually, for the Women's Six Nations, one of my favourite competitions. We saw this coming. England were on fiery form all throughout this tournament, weren't they?
They were, yeah. I think it was expected. You know, they are now on a 23 match winning streak. I don't think they've been defeated in 2 years. And yeah, they clinched their fourth consecutive Six Nations title. So it kind of the tournament has been set up quite nicely to end with England-France, who were the two best teams. But yeah, England, I know the match took place in France as well, and it was actually I think, you know, all the England players got booed when they walked out and stuff. There was a really good atmosphere there, I think. And, you know, obviously quite a big rivalry building between the two countries in women's rugby. But England managed to win 24-12, yeah, in what was a relatively comfortable win for England to continue their dominance. And yeah, all focus now on the Women's World Cup later this year, because they are definitely hot favourites.
Yeah, terrific. Well done them. Sarah Burns scored a couple of tries too. And I know our friend Polly Cleal, she's a regular on the team, and she's been having a great tournament too. So kudos to England. They are the team to beat in the 15s for sure. Well, we're going to switch to soccer now and to Barcelona. And we're talking about attendance records at women's sports, Nancy, with that boxing match. They were pretty impressive in Barcelona, weren't they? Record crowds at a women's football match. Yeah.
So yeah, this was about 10 days ago, but I thought I'd include it on this show because we didn't have one last week. So it's, you know, I think it's well worth talking about. So yeah, Barcelona broke the world record for women's football match attendance for the second time in basically the space of 2 weeks. So they had played Real Madrid, and the attendance was 91,553. And then this time they played Wolfsburg in the semi-finals of the Champions League, and it was 91,648. So they broke the record by roughly 100 people. And I've spoken about the one at Real Madrid before, but it was just it's incredible to see numbers like that at any football match. I think it's quite rare that you do see that, and to have it at a women's football game was absolutely giant. And I think just across the whole of the Women's Champions League semi-finals, I think there were 179,000 fans. So across both legs of the two matches, the 4 matches in total. And that's just incredible. Just incredible numbers, really. And hopefully kind of a platform for which women's football can kind of spring off. And, the weekly matches in the league, hopefully they can start to pick up a few more hundred and thousands of spectators, and we can really be starting to grow the audience.
Yeah, that's tremendous. It really is. And also, thinking of football, the Angel City, the new LA club, they've filled out their stadium too for a match, rather. I think last weekend. Was it against Carolina Courage?
Yes, yeah. That looked amazing.
Yeah, completely packed the arena. So that's a really great story, what's happening over there with Angel City. All right, let's turn now to a story you found about a woman who's a cancer survivor, and she ran 104 marathons in 104 days.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible story. So Jackie Hunt Brosma. She has, it's yet to be ratified, but it's pretty certain, because I don't think many people have done it, but she's passed the Guinness World Record for the most consecutive marathons. She's run a marathon every day since mid-January. So she's completed her 104th one last weekend. Her story is absolutely incredible. So she was diagnosed with cancer in 2002. They amputated her left leg to save her life within 2 weeks, and she was only 26, so incredibly young. Took up running in 2016, and then she's got now a special prosthetic for long distance runners, just kind of did a 10K, did a half marathon, and started doing marathons, and now it's got to the stage where she's doing 104 in 104 days. So it's absolutely brilliant, and I hope the Guinness World Records, they've said it's going to take around 3 months to certify the record, and I hope that comes through for her, because it's an absolutely incredible achievement.
Awesome. It really just shows the spirit of female athletes and, what we can actually achieve. I love that story. Good luck to her. To run that much every day. I know you've done a whole full marathon, but can you imagine running 26.2 miles every day since mid-January? No, I can't. I can't imagine that at all. That's just, your muscles. I suppose maybe your muscles just get used to it. Maybe you just become, maybe after a certain point, you just get used to it and you can do it. But I can't imagine that. No, it's unbelievable. Yeah, I understand that feeling. Having just done that bike ride, we were doing like 60 miles a day. One day we did 66. And you do, as you go on each day, you get fitter, you get stronger, but you also have to balance the fatigue as well. Yeah, I suppose that's it. Rest is quite important. And we didn't have a rest. We went straight through 8 days. And I think if I were to do it again and thinking about Jackie there, I mean, she was doing it consecutively. I think I would have taken a day off in between. Split it in half. But you learn, don't you? You learn how your body responds. Yeah. Well, obviously Jackie doesn't need anything. Apparently. It's quite amazing. Good for her. Good for her. All right. Well, you've got one more story, then I've got a story too. Yours is about one of your favourite athletes, isn't it? Thompson-Herah. Yeah, this is a really interesting story. So
The Jamaican Athletics Administrative Association, so the governing body for athletics in Jamaica, they've told a newspaper in Jamaica that they believe that Elaine Thompson-Herah, her time that she ran over 100 meters last August, so it was 10.54 seconds, should be the women's world record. So the actual the officially recognised world record is 10.49 seconds, which was run by Florence Griffith Joyner in 1988. There's a bit of controversy over the record because a lot of people said that the wind reading during the when the race took place was a bit dodgy because there was an official standing too close to the where the gauge which reads it. And obviously if there's a certain speed of wind, if it's too fast, then a world record is just knocked off because it's kind of helps you. It's like not necessarily a natural running time. So yeah, the Jamaican Athletics Administrative Association President Garth Gale has said that Elaine Thompson-Herah's performance should be recognised as a world record. It's worthy of recognition, and that all technical areas were covered, such as the wind reading and the authenticity of the track. And interestingly, they managed to get hold of World Athletics President Sebastian Coe, who told the newspaper that there would be very difficult legal obstacles that would stand in the way of Thompson-Herah's time being recognised as the world record. And it'd be, you'd need the proof, I think, of Griffith Joyner's world record not being official, which would be really hard to do because that's now about coming up to 40 years ago. So yeah, I think something to keep an eye on. I think it's quite interesting. And as we saw at the Olympics, like women's sprinting right now is just rapid. Like it's so fast. But the fact that that world record is still not broken when we've got like such fast women running at the moment and constantly smashing times, it is quite remarkable. So yeah, I think just quite an interesting story there, and yeah, maybe a situation to keep an eye on. Can't see it actually happening, but potentially Thompson-Herah will actually break the world record, on her own terms anyway.
Yes. Oh, yes. There's a lot more to come from her, I'm sure. All right. We'll keep an eye on that story. Now, I want to wrap up this week with my sport, Nancy, with the sport of eventing, 3-day eventing, because last weekend saw the Land Rover Kentucky 3-day event presented by Mars Equestrian here in Kentucky, in the States. It's one of 2 5-star competitions in the US now. We had our second one added in Maryland last fall. But the Kentucky 3-day event is the pinnacle of the spring calendar here in the US. And what I got excited about watching this year was not the fact that Michael Young, the German rider, won again for the 4th time, but who came second. Second place went to Jasmine Ingman. She's 25 years old, from Cheshire in the north of England. It was her first 5-star competition. It was her first time in the States. And she conducted herself brilliantly, as well as showing what a talent she is. And it has really made everybody look up to who is this Jasmine Ingman and where is she from? Well, she's apparently, I didn't realize that she's a double European gold medalist. She's the under 16, under 18, under 21, under 25 British champion. She won the Blenheim Palace 4-star last year, which is the level below the Kentucky 3-day event. As I said, there's only 6 now, 5-star events in the world, and she finished runner-up to Mickey Young, which is an incredible achievement. She finished, she had a dressage score of 28.1. Very few were in the 20s anyway, so she finished 4th after dressage. She added just 2.8 time penalties on cross-country to finish the day on 30.9 in 3rd place. And then she moved up a place. She had 0.8 of a time penalty in the final show jumping phase, but she did enough to finish second on 31.7, which is extraordinary in her first 5-star competition and against the likes of competition from Michael Young as well as many others. And we saw some of the old-timers from England as well, and I'm sure Pippa won't mind me mentioning that. Pippa Funnell, who's a Grand Slam winner, she's one of the best in the sport. She was over here with 2 horses, and a lot of other Olympians were out there too, a lot more experienced riders, but this girl really showed herself. I was super impressed with her talent. She had a lovely horse, Banzar de Loire, super talented horse as well. So we're going to see a lot more of her because clearly she's got the record. She's came up, through all the youth programs, and I'm going to try and talk to her and find out what other horses she has, because badminton 3-day event is this weekend, starts today as we speak in Gloucestershire, and that's of course the spring equivalent to the Kentucky event. It's a 5-star competition which has actually suffered from the last 2 years from COVID. So it'll be fun to be back and watching them out there in Gloucestershire with the most prestigious event in the sport, arguably. So that's this weekend. But the one to watch for me is Jasmine Ingman and what she can produce in the future. I'm looking forward to seeing what other horses she has and how soon she gets on the team, because, of course, it's this year is the World Championships, Nancy. We had the global format of the World Equestrian Games in the past, which has now been broken down to individual championships. So the World Equestrian Games format, the World Championships, has taken over that, and the eventing takes place in Pratoni del Vivaro, which is in the south of Italy. I used to be based there years ago with the junior Italian team, Nancy, so I feel in a way I should be going back and watching them, but I won't be able to do my biking if I go to Italy for a competition, will I?
You can bring your bike to Italy. I've heard there's, the Giro d'Italia starts today. It's, a lot of nice cycling path around there.
Yeah. Be some lovely cycling. All right. Well, that about wraps it up for me. Nancy, anything more from your end?
No, nothing more. I've got an exciting evening going to the Emirates to watch Arsenal women play Tottenham.
Tottenham, that's a local derby, so
it's the North London derby. Yeah, it's very exciting. It's a bit of a shame because it was meant to take place at a weekend a few weekends ago, and Tottenham got COVID in their squad. But on the weekend, it was estimated probably around 15,000 people were going to be there. But I think now it's a Wednesday evening, it's going to be a little less. But I'm hoping for around 10 to 11,000 people there. Obviously, hoping for an Arsenal win. Yeah, should be a really good evening. So I can chat about that next week.
Yeah, I'm sure. Absolutely. Just a quick mention, because I talked about it before we hit record today. Tobin Heath, who we often talk about on the show, because I'm a big fan of Tobin's. She's been released by Arsenal now because of injury. So she's been released early from her contract and is back in the US. How much will you miss her at Arsenal, Nancy?
I think, she didn't play that much and, she wasn't like a regular starter, but there were a couple of really crucial goals. And the title race is going right down to the last weekend of the season. And if we do win it, a lot can be owed to her goals. And I think, a lot of the players and the managers spoke about her mentality that she brought to like the dressing room as well, and just the team. And so I think her experience is unrivaled, really. So I think that aspect of it will definitely be missed. Yeah. Obviously, having a player like Tobin Heath is great for your team. But yeah, I hope she kind of manages to recover from her injuries, because it is something that's obviously plaguing her at the moment. Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll watch that with interest and see where she goes, because Louisville do have her right, but again, with the injury as well, she could be released from those, and we'll see if she ends up on the West Coast with any particular team we have in mind for any particular reason. I'm going to leave it like that for now. All right, Nancy, great to catch up with you. Good to be back on the show and bringing you the weekly news. And you can follow Nancy's reporting at Give Me Sport Women. Just tell everybody where they can find you, Nancy, and your social media. Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Nancy_Gillen, and on Instagram at Nancy Gillen _sport. And then, Give Me Sport Women. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we're Give Me Sport W. Perfect. All right. And we're, as always, at Wiz Sports on social media platforms and at wizsports.com, where you'll find the link to the stories that we cover here. Just look for the show notes, the episode page at Wiz Sports News. Everything is on that page and much more. So until next week, that's it from Nancy and I. Enjoy the football game tonight, Nancy. Cheer on Arsenal. I know you will. And I hope you don't get too wet. Sounds like you're going to have some rain tonight. Yeah, I'm hoping it's, I know I am sitting undercover, so I should be okay, and I think it has stopped raining as well. Hopefully, I think it'd be too much to hope for the sun to come out, but no rain would be nice. All right. Well, have fun. I know you will. We'll catch up next week, and thank you, everybody, for listening. Come back next week and hear more from Wiz Sports News Desk.